The transport pod descended through layers of silver mist, breaking through to reveal a Thermira colony suspended between three crystalline moons. Lyran Cross pressed his palm against the viewing window, watching the geometric structures of the floating city materialize like ghosts in the fog. He'd chosen this place specifically for its isolation, a distant outpost where nobody knew his name or his shame. The landing platform hummed beneath his boots as he stepped out, carrying nothing but a worn travel pack and the weight of 3 years' grief. The air here tasted different, cleaner, thinner, with a metallic edge that reminded him he was far from home. First time in Ethermere? The voice came from his left, melodic and warm. Lyran turned to find a woman standing near the platform's edge. Her skin, a deep purple, that seemed to shimmer in the mist-filtered light. She was a Thuri, one of the empathic species that populated the outer colonies. Her dark hair fell in waves past her shoulders, and her eyes, bright amber, studied him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "Yes," he replied curtly, adjusting his pack. "I'm Nyla Voss. I work with the Colony Council." She stepped closer, and he noticed the silver markings that traced delicate patterns along her temples and neck, signs of an active empath. "You're Lyran Cross, the strategist from the Meridian Wars." His jaw tightened. "So much for anonymity. I'm retired, I know." Her smile was gentle, knowing, "I've been expecting you." Something in her words sent a chill down his spine, not fear, but recognition, as if some part of him had been waiting for this moment too, though that was impossible. "The council assigned me to help newcomers settle," Nyla continued, gesturing toward the colony's heart where buildings spiraled upward like organic growths. "I can show you to your quarters." "I don't need help," Lyran said, already moving past her. Perhaps not. She fell into step beside him anyway, her presence somehow both soothing and unsettling. "But I'm offering it regardless." They walked in silence through winding pathways where soft bioluminescent plants lined the edges, casting everything in a gentle blue glow. Lyran could feel her stealing glances at him, as if trying to solve a puzzle she'd been working on for years. "Why do you keep looking at me like that?" he finally asked, irritation creeping into his voice. Nyla stopped walking. In the dim light, her purple skin seemed to pulse with an inner radiance. "Because I've seen you before, Lyran Cross. In my dreams. Since I was a child, its blood ran cold. The soul thread. The ancient Ethari belief that certain beings were connected across time and space, destined to bond. He'd heard the stories had lived one once, before everything shattered. "I don't believe in destiny," he said flatly. "I do." Her amber eyes held his without wavering. "And I believe you're mine." Loren turned away, his hands clenching into fists. "Then you believe wrong. I came here to be alone." "I know," Nyla said softly. "I also know that's not what you need." He wanted to argue, to tell her she understood nothing. But something in her voice, sadness that mirrored his own, stopped him. Instead, he walked away into the mist, leaving her standing in the glow of the pathway lights. Behind him, Nyla whispered to the empty air, "I'll wait, Lyran, as long as it takes." Lyran's quarters occupied the highest tier of Ethermere's eastern spiral, a deliberate choice for its remoteness. The circular room featured floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the void between moons, and he'd spent his first 3 days there in blessed solitude, watching stars wheeling through space. On the 4th morning, he found a small package outside his door. Inside was a thermal blanket woven with temperature-regulating fibers and a handwritten note. "The nights here are colder than you're used to." Nachi should have returned it. Instead, he used it that night, and hated how right she'd been about the cold. The market district became his hunting ground for supplies, a maze of stalls where merchants sold everything from crystallized nutrients to memory storage devices. Lyran kept his head down, moving efficiently through the crowds. "Those won't grow in this climate." Neela's voice came from behind him as he examined a packet of seeds. He didn't turn around. "How would you know what I'm planning to grow?" "Because I know you want to build something. Create a garden, maybe. Something living that you can control." She moved into his peripheral vision, wearing a flowing garment that shifted from deep purple to silver, But those are lowland seeds. They need gravity stabilization. Despite himself, he looked at her. And you're an agricultural expert now? I'm an empath who's lived here for 8 years. She plucked a different packet from the display. These will thrive in your quarters. They even produce small flowers that bloom at night. Their fingers brushed as he took the seeds, and the contact sent a jolt through him, warm, electric, familiar in a way that terrified him. He pulled back quickly. Thank you, he muttered, hating the civility. Nyla smiled, and it transformed her entire face. You're welcome, Liren. She appeared again 2 days later at the observation deck, where he watched meteor showers streak across the darkness. She didn't speak, just stood at the railing 3 meters away, her presence both intrusive and oddly comforting. Why are you doing this? He finally asked. Doing what? Following me? Leaving gifts. Showing up wherever I am? Nyla turned to face him fully, moonlight painting her purple skin in shades of violet and blue. Because I see you, Liren, not the war hero or the strategist or the man running from his past. I see you, the person who tends those seeds every morning, who stands here counting stars when he can't sleep, who carries so much pain he thinks it defines him. You don't know anything about me, he said. But the words lacked conviction. I know you lost someone. I know the soul thread bond broke and nearly destroyed you. Her voice was gentle, but unflinching. I know you're terrified it could happen again. Liren's composure cracked. Then you understand why I need you to stop. Whatever you think connects us, it's not real. It's just Ethari mysticism and coincidence. Is it? She moved closer, and he could smell something sweet in her hair like night-blooming flowers. Then why does your pulse quicken when I'm near? Why do you sleep better on nights after we've spoken? Why did you keep the blanket? Because he was weak. Because some traitorous part of him wanted exactly what she was offering. I can't do this, he whispered. I'm not asking you to. Not yet. Nyla reached out slowly, giving him time to move away, and placed her hand over his heart. The touch was feather-light, but he felt it everywhere, a warmth spreading through his chest, easing knots of tension he'd carried for years. I'm just asking you to let me stay. Let me show you that caring for someone doesn't always end in loss. He should have pushed her away. Instead, he stood frozen as she withdrew her hand, her amber eyes glistening with unshed tears. I'll be at the healing gardens tomorrow evening, she said. If you want to talk, or just sit in silence. Whatever you need. And she was gone, leaving him alone with the stars and the terrifying realization that he wanted to see her again. The healing gardens occupied Ithermir's core, a biodome where exotic plants from 100 worlds grew in carefully controlled environments. Liren told himself he was going for the solitude. Not because Nyla might be there, she was there. She sat on a curved bench beneath a canopy of luminescent vines, their soft glow creating an intimate cocoon of light. She'd changed into something simpler, a close-fitting tunic that highlighted the elegant lines of her form, her purple skin seeming to absorb and reflect the garden's bioluminescence. You came, she said, not bothering to hide her pleasure. I needed air. He sat down, leaving space between them that felt simultaneously too much and not enough. The meteor storm peaks tonight. The whole colony will gather on the main platform to watch. Nyla tilted her head, studying him. But I thought you might prefer a quieter view. She was right, of course. She was always right about him in ways that should have been impossible. They sat in comfortable silence as the first. Meteors began streaking across the sky, visible through the dome's transparent panels. Each flash of light painted Nyla's profile in stark relief, the curve of her jaw, the fullness of her lips, the intelligence in her eyes. Tell me about the dreams, Liren said suddenly. Nyla drew a slow breath. They started when I was 7. Just flashes at first, a face I didn't recognize, a voice calling my name. As I grew older, they became more detailed. I saw you in battle, saw you laughing with friends, saw you... She hesitated. Saw you with her. Your first bond. His throat tightened. Her name was Sira. I know. I felt your love for her in the dreams. I felt your devastation when she died. Anila turned to face him fully. I'm not trying to replace her, Lyran. That's not what this is. Then what is it? His voice came out rough, raw. It's a chance. For both of us. She shifted closer, her knee brushing his. I've spent 15 years seeing fragments of someone I'd never met, wondering if I was going mad. When you arrived, I felt like I could finally breathe. Like some missing piece of me had clicked into place. It's the soul thread talking. It's biology, pheromones, Athari mysticism. It's real, she interrupted firmly. Whether you call it destiny, or chemistry, or coincidence, what I feel for you is real. And I hope you feel it too. A meteor burst overhead, brilliant and brief, and in its light, Lyran saw everything he'd been denying. The way his chest loosened when she smiled. The way her absence created a hollow ache. The way touching her felt like coming home to a place he'd never been. I'm afraid, he admitted, the words scraping out of him. I know. Nyla's hand found his, their fingers intertwining. Fear means you're alive, Lyran. It means you're willing to feel again. He looked down at their joined hands, his scarred and weathered. Hers smooth and marked with silver, and something inside him shifted. Not breaking, but opening. The bond with Sira. When she died in combat, it felt like my mind was tearing apart. Like every nerve in my body was on fire. I was in medical stasis for months. He met Nyla's eyes. I can't survive that again. You won't have to. She brought her free hand to his face, cupping his jaw with infinite gentleness. Because I'm not going anywhere. And this time, you're not alone in the fear. The air between them charged with electricity. Nyla leaned forward slowly, giving him every opportunity to pull away. When their lips met, it was soft. Questioning, a whisper of possibility rather than a demand. Lyran responded despite himself, his hand sliding into her hair as he deepened the kiss. She tasted like the sweet flowers in her scent, and touching her scent warmth, cascading through him. Melting walls he'd built brick by painful brick. When they finally parted, both breathing hard, Nyla rested her forehead against his. Stay with me tonight, she whispered. Just to talk. To be close. Nothing you're not ready for. He should have said no. Should have protected himself. Instead, he nodded. And let her lead him. Hamalaran woke in Nyla's quarters as dawn light filtered through crystalline windows. Adahada, her body curled against his side. They'd spent the night talking, sharing stories and scars, falling asleep tangled together in a way that felt both terrifying and inevitable. Her eyes opened, amber meeting his, and she smiled with such unguarded joy that his heart twisted. Good morning, she murmured. You should move. Create distance, but her warmth was addictive. Nyla traced patterns on his chest through his shirt. Last night was a violent alarm shattered the moment, red emergency lights pulsing throughout the colony. The floor lurched beneath them, and Nyla grabbed his arm for stability. Structural failure, she gasped, reading something on her communication device. The southern anchor somethings collapsed. They dressed quickly, Lyran's military training kicking in. Outside, chaos reigned. Colonists ran toward evacuation points while emergency crews rushed toward the disaster site. I have to help, Nyla said. The injured will need empaths to stabilize them. It's too dangerous. It's my job, Lyran. She kissed him hard and fast. I'll be careful. She was gone before he could argue, her purple form disappearing into the panicked crowd. Lyran stood frozen, torn between following and fleeing and hating himself. For even considering the latter, he chose to flee. He returned to his quarters, threw his belongings into his pack, and booked immediate transport off Ithermere. The bond hadn't fully formed yet. He could still escape before it was too late. Before he was vulnerable to that soul-destroying pain again. The transport was scheduled to leave within the hour. Lyran paced his room, ignoring the increasingly desperate news feeds about the disaster's severity. Ignoring the part of him screaming that he was making a mistake. Then the pain hit. It started as a dull ache in his chest, quickly escalating to agony that drove him to his knees. Every nerve ending felt like it was being flayed. His mind filled with echoes of fear and hurt that weren't his own night lie. The incomplete soul thread had gotten close enough for it to start forming, but not close enough to stabilize. And now she was hurt. The partial bond was tearing them both apart. Lyran crawled to his communication device, pulling up colony security feeds with shaking hands. It took precious minutes to find Hurt trapped in a collapsed medical bay, bleeding from a head wound. Surrounded by injured colonists, she was still trying to help even as she barely remained conscious. The pain intensified, and he screamed, understanding flooding through him. This was his choice: complete the bond and risk everything. Or sever it now and let them both suffer until one or both died from the incomplete connection. Some choices weren't really choices at all. Loren staggered to his feet, abandoned his packed bag, and ran toward the southern sector. Emergency crews tried to stop him, but he fought past them with desperate strength. The collapsed area was a nightmare of twisted metal and shattered crystal. "Nyla," he shouted, climbing through debris. "Lyran." Her voice was weak, distant. "You shouldn't be here." Found her in a pocket of space, covered in dust, her purple skin pale. She'd used her empathic abilities to keep 3 injured colonists stable, draining herself in the process. "I'm sorry," he breathed, kneeling beside her. "I'm so sorry. I almost left, I know." She touched his face with a trembling hand. "I felt it. The fear. I can't lose you," he said, tears streaming down his face. "But I'm terrified of needing you this much." "Then be terrified." "With me?" She smiled weakly. "Together?" The word resonated through him like a bell. Together. Not alone in his fear. Lyran pulled her close, and as their foreheads touched, he felt the soul thread beginning to weave properly, not forced, but chosen, accepted. "Complete the bond," Nyla whispered. "Choose me, Lyran. Choose us." And surrounded by chaos, in the wreckage of his carefully constructed isolation, he did. The soul thread ritual required consciousness, intention, and surrender. Lyran had experienced it once before, but that had been different. Young love, untested, and optimistic. This was forged in fire, built on shared trauma and deliberate choice. He held Nyla close as rescue crews worked to free them, and focused on the sensation of their minds beginning to merge. It wasn't an invasion, but an invitation. He felt her determination, her gentleness, her unwavering belief that he was worth fighting for. In return, he offered his own bruised and battered trust. His grief, his desperate hope that maybe this time would be different. The thread wove between them, silver and unbreakable, carrying emotions and thoughts across a bridge only they could traverse. "I see you, Nyla," whispered in his mind. "All your broken pieces. Oh, and I love you anyway. I'm afraid I'll fail you." He confessed in the same silent language. "Then we'll fail together and try again." That's what love is. The pain from the incomplete bond. Faded, replaced by a warmth that spread through his entire body. He understood now what he'd been too damaged to comprehend before. The soul thread wasn't a vulnerability. It was a strength shared between two people. They were extracted from the rubble hours later, both battered but alive. The medical team wanted to separate them for treatment. But the completed bond made that impossible. They needed to remain close until it stabilized over the next few days. Stubborn even in bonding, the doctor muttered, but arranged for adjacent beds. Nyla reached across the space between them, and Lyran took her hand, marveling at how natural it felt. "How right, no regrets?" she asked softly, her amber eyes searching his face. "Thousands," he admitted, "but none about this." She laughed, then winced at the pain it caused. "You're a terrible romantic. I'm a work in progress." "Good." She squeezed his hand. "I prefer projects I can help with." Over the following days, as Ethermere rebuilt and their bond solidified, Lyran discovered what he'd forgotten in his years of grief, that healing wasn't betraying the past, but honoring it by allowing himself a future. He told Nyla about Cyranot with the anguished guilt he'd carried, but with fond remembrance. She listened, sharing her own losses and fears. Together, they built something new from the fragments of who they'd been. A week after the disaster, they stood on the main observation platform as another meteor shower painted the sky. Nyla leaned against him, and through their bond, he felt her contentment, her joy, her deep and abiding love. "Why don't I show you something?" she said, pulling him toward a quieter section. There she'd planted the night-blooming flowers from the seeds she'd recommended. They'd grown impossibly fast, already beginning to bud. "They respond to soul-threaded partners," Nyla explained. "They bloom brighter when bonded pairs are near. I planted them the day after we met, a promise to myself that I wouldn't give up on you." Liron touched one of the buds, and it unfurled at his proximity, releasing sweet fragrance into the air. More flowers followed, until they were surrounded by a garden of light and scent. "You're insufferably optimistic," he said, but his voice was thick with emotion. "You're welcomely pessimistic," she countered. "We balance each other," he pulled her close, kissing her under the meteor-streaked sky, and felt the bond hum between them. Not a chain, but a choice they both kept making with every breath. "I love you," he said, the words still unfamiliar but growing easier. "I choose you. Every day, I'll keep choosing you." "And I choose you," Nyla whispered against his lips, "my stubborn, scarred, beautiful bondmate." Above them, meteors fell like blessings, and below, night-blooming flowers opened their petals to the light of two souls, finally completely intertwined. In the distance, Ithermere gleamed between its 3 moons, a colony rebuilt. A heart repaired, a future written not by destiny, but by the persistent, patient power of love freely given and gratefully received. And in the garden of glowing flowers, 2 people who'd found each other across dreams and distance held each other close, simply existed in the perfect, terrifying, beautiful now.